Welcome everybody. As you come in, please make sure to turn off all of your cameras. You will not need it.
We'll start in about 1 minute or so.
As you guys come in, you don't need your cameras for this meeting, so go ahead and shut off your camera.
We'll start in just a bit. There's a lot of people still entering, so I'm going to give them just a minute more. Alrighty, good morning, everybody. Our 2021 Rochester High seniors, we're excited to start the school year with you. And we wanted to do a short introduction first, just to kind of help you recall who your counselors are. So first off, my name is Mrs. Otul Seka, and I service students with the last names of A to BQ.
Hi, everybody. I'm Miss Kinney. I service everybody with last names BR through DA.
Good morning, class of 2021. I'm Ms. Kagans, and I service students with last name DB through H. And thanks for coming.
And good morning, everybody. This is Mr. Green. I service students last names I through MON.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Ms. Sorrentino, and my caseload is MOO through SE.
And Ms. Messing is our last counselor who closes out the alphabet. So we wanted to go over a couple housekeeping things first. One being, if you could please be sure that your camera is turned off and that you're muted. We're going to be recording this session today, and so we want to be sure that we protect your privacy. And so be sure that everything's turned off. You can ask questions in the chat during the presentation. The questions will be addressed at the very end of this presentation. So be sure to address them. Some of the answers you might find during the presentation. So if you want to kind of jot it down on a sticky note and then ask that question at the end, you can also do that. So we hope you find this informative. We're glad that you're here today with us, and welcome to your senior year. Pretty awesome stuff. Okay, next slide, please. Senior meeting. This is your senior meeting, the class of 2021. We're going to go over just the nuts and bolts of what it takes to apply to kind of a traditional college. Next slide, please. Just a couple things throughout life. These are just different things that we want you to take a look at. But throughout life, you're going to potentially be making some different career paths as into your adulthood. And this is really just step one. Next slide, please. So choices after high school. So we all need to do something after high school, and we call that post-high school education programming or planning. So we want to take a look at vocational training or skilled trades, potential for armed forces, community college for their certificate programs, or potentially starting at a community college and transferring onto a university for a bachelor's degree. University directly out of high school, where you'd likely earn a bachelor's degree, maybe continued education after that, or to enter the workforce. Next slide, please. Topics that will be covered today: steps in the application process, the college application process, standardized testing information, and for that we mean the SAT or the ACT, Number 3, scholarships and financial aid, how to pay for college. Number 4, NCAA eligibility information and resources. And what that is if you're looking to be an athlete on the college campus, different steps that you need to take to be sure that you're eligible. Number 5, admission terms and policies, just different vocab words to help you through the process. Then number 6, exploring and gathering information and opportunities. Next slide, please. So different things of what to look for in a college. Obviously, we want to stay very career focused. Colleges we need to look at as a business and a pathway for what it's going to take to get you to the next stage in the game. We want you to be successful in your adult life. We want you to be able to do the things and have the things and be happy. And so we really want to focus first on the career and kind of backtrack to what the major is in order to get to that career. Now, we realize that not all of you know what you want to get into at this point in your life, but maybe you have a general idea of different things that you enjoy. We encourage you to get on different programs like Zello, and we'll talk about that more. That's the formerly called career cruising, to really do some different career exploration. But what you want to look for in the college is, number 1, the major. Does it offer the program or degree that you need in order to get the job that you want? Not every college offers every single major. And so you want to be sure that the college actually has that major, and stay rooted in that major first. Next, location. If you want to be further away from home or close to home, the setting, the size of the school, the type of school, the cost obviously is a factor for most of us. The housing options, athletics, and overall campus life. What's offered on campus, what kind of clubs, what kind of job it would be offered potentially on that campus. Next slide, please. And how do I apply? The college application is on the college's website, and there typically is a cost involved with the application. It's usually within the first page of the college website, but there's always a search bar on the college's websites, and you can type in application there. But you're going to look for keywords like apply here or incoming freshman in order to start the college application. Most colleges have their applications available starting August 1st, so you're going to find them on most colleges' websites at this point. You're going to send your transcript through something called Parchment, which is a partnership that we have. Many years ago, the state of Michigan decided that all transcripts needed to be paperless, and so the company that we use is actually called Parchment. Before your transcript can be sent, a release of information needs to be sent, which really just gives us permission to send your transcripts on your behalf. And that was completed during the registration process through ParentView. So hopefully that release of information is done for all of you. The other step is to send your ACT or SAT score directly to the college. We cannot send it on your behalf. And obviously we realize that really most of you haven't taken the ACT or the SAT, and we'll talk about that later on in the presentation. There's something that a lot of schools are doing, and it's called test optional, and that will be discussed in detail later on. Next slide, please. Alrighty, so most colleges will have a deadline somewhere in the early part of November or mid-November, we're hearing now. It's been pretty typical that November 1st was the deadline for some of those colleges, but we're hearing that U of M has a deadline closer to November 15th at this point. So you really want to take a look at the college's website to see exactly when their application deadline is. What I typically encourage my seniors to do is to have their applications done around Halloween. I feel like that's a time where we kind of realize it's coming up on us, and we're really excited about Halloween. So that's maybe a date that we can have in our mind a little bit easier than sometime in November. So around Halloween, we'd like you to have your applications completed by that time. You're going to create an organizational system that works for you. Consider making a new email address strictly for college communication. Create a folder per school, store your passwords, make a calendar so that you can adhere to the deadlines. And really importantly, don't forget about scholarships. So I typically encourage kids to ask their parents to help with the scholarship search because it can sometimes be a big undertaking. So hopefully you can maybe start to organize weekly or bi-weekly family meetings where you talk about your next step in applying to college and your scholarship search, and really have that open line of communication with your parents so that you guys can really team this out. In your application, be sure that you proofread prior to submitting. We want to be sure that there aren't any mistakes in your spelling. And if your school requires an essay, which not that many of them do, you're going to ask an English teacher or an adult to read over your errors. Make sure that you stay on topic and really show them who you are. So if your college requires this essay to be done, this really is your opportunity for them to show who you truly are. Make sure that you focus less on the parts of the difficulty maybe that you've experienced, and you're going to really focus more on how maybe you've changed or you have persevered through that experience more than anything else. So less on kind of on what had happened and more of what you had learned from it. They really want to see who you've become as a person, how you can persevere through the difficult times, and how you've really grown. If your school requires a letter of recommendation, you're going to ask a teacher, a coach, an employer as soon as possible, and have give them your resume so that they can write to really your strengths. Next slide, please.
This is Mrs. Messing-Nervito. We use an online provider called Parchment. So in order to request your transcript, you can go to either www.parchment.com or you can visit the RHS counseling website, and there's a link there for you. You will need to create an account with Parchment if you have not already done so. We have sent out an email from Parchment today that has a link. It is much easier to create your account through Parchment if you use that link. So please check your RCS email today, and maybe if you do not see it, please check your junk folder. Sometimes it is set there. When creating your account, if you do not use the link that was emailed to you today, it will ask you for information such as your name, year of graduation, student ID number. It will also ask you for which institution you are wanting to send your transcript from. You will select Rochester High School. Please verify that you have the correct Rochester High School. While building your profile in Parchment, if you get to the steps where it starts asking for your address, you've gone too far. So you can then stop. You don't need to complete the address, your address, and you don't need to go any further. At that point, you can go straight to order a transcript, and that would be at the top of the screen. When you order a transcript, it will ask you, where do you want your transcript sent? You will then type in the name of the school and search for that college or institution. Please, when you're looking, make sure that you are looking for undergraduate. So if you want to send it to Michigan State, it may come up twice, once with graduate and once undergraduate. You will always be choosing undergraduate. Once you have added all of your colleges, you will then select to send your current transcript. If you are applying using the Common Application, you will not send your transcript directly to that college or university. So for example, if you are applying to U of M, then you will not send your transcript directly to U of M because you're using the Common App. So instead, you're going to send your transcript to Common App. So when you're filling out what institution to send it to, you will choose type in Common App. Parchment will then ask for your Common App ID. So you will need your Common App ID to input so that it can match and connect with Common App. You will do the same process if you're going to be sending your transcript to NCAA. Here is a list of colleges that use the Common App, but please note that many of these colleges will also have their own application. So if you are applying to colleges and it gives you the option between applying using the Common App or their standard application, we recommend that you use the institution's standard application. The Common App can take hours to complete. Whereas the state application, the college application may only take 30 minutes to an hour. There is no advantage or disadvantage when choosing what application to use. So for example, if you're going to apply to Michigan State and Oakland University, we would recommend that you use the Michigan State application and not the common application. Most students will be using the common application if you choose a school that requires it, such as U of M. If you are using the common app, your step-by-step process should be number one be to choose your colleges that you plan on applying to. Once you've done that, we ask that you skip to the education information. This is important because you need to finish these two portions in the common app before you can invite your counselor to submit our forms or for you to invite a teacher for a recommendation. You want to give your teachers and us counselors as much time as possible to finish our portion of your common application. So we recommend that you do these steps first. Once you have selected your colleges, or at least one college, and you have completed the education section, you will then go to the college itself. You will choose one college, and you will then go to recommenders and FERPA. You will need to release authorization at this point. Most colleges recommend that you waive your rights for FERPA, but on the common application, it will give you more information and walk you through the process so you can decide what is the best option for you. Once you have done that, you will be able to invite your counselor to submit our portion of the common app. Please make sure that when you are entering our information that you type our emails correctly. Once you send the information in Common App, we receive an email. If you type our email incorrectly, then the counselor or the teacher would not know that you need them to complete anything on your Common App. So my recommendation would be that once you invite somebody to be part of your Common App process, that you send them an email to verify that they have received that link. Please make sure you are entering emails correctly. If you are unsure, then please reach out to that teacher or your counselor to get the correct email address. What happens if it goes to the wrong person, the wrong email? Well, one year I had a student that was applying using the Common App, and they mistakenly input my email address incorrectly. I was not aware that they were using the Common App because it wasn't a Common App school. And it was right before the deadline, and they were panicked because I hadn't done my portion. But because the email address was incorrect, I hadn't gotten an invite from Common App to work on that. So please verify that the email addresses are in fact correct.
Okay, one of the next steps that many of you might take in the application process is going to be to send your ACT or SAT scores directly to the college. Next slide. During COVID-19, there are many, many universities who are being flexible with this. A lot of them are allowing you to self-report. What that means is you don't necessarily have to send the scores directly from College Board or ACT. You can actually download the PDF and send that to the admissions office. A lot of schools are also allowing students to optionally send their scores. In order to send the scores, you would have to log into ACT or SAT at College Board to send those scores directly. We don't, from Rochester High, send the scores. That has to come from you. But as counselors, we can certainly assist you if you want to self-report the scores. When you are sending the scores directly from College Board or ACT, you can see our school code there is 233195, and that is the code you'll need, so they'll know what high school you're sending those from. You'll want to make sure that you send your scores on time prior to the deadlines. This is just one of the steps, but If you don't complete all the steps of an application process, it will not be processed. So you want to make sure that you get it all done. It doesn't matter the order, but it is a necessary step for most schools. You have plenty of time to take additional tests, and I'd like to show you the schedule in the next slide. So these are the testing dates for both SAT and ACT for the rest of this year going into next year. Colleges do not care how many times you take the test. In fact, I've had plenty of students take it 3 and 4 times, not just because they didn't like their score, but they were also trying to achieve certain scores for scholarship consideration. I would advise, if you haven't taken an SAT, that you look at signing up, or an ACT, that you look at signing up for the December test. There, I believe, is going to be other tests for ACT coming in October, but the sooner that you apply for these tests or register, the better. A lot of them have already filled up, and you don't want to get left behind. A question that I've been asked a lot, and I see that is in the chat, is will we be having an SAT if we go in person? The answer is unclear, but I know that there has been a lot of discussion and a lot of talk about hosting the test here at Rochester. But what I would advise students to do is to still register for a test. That way you can still get your applications completed, have those test scores sent. Next slide. So again, as I said, some universities are recognizing the challenges of COVID, that not every student was able to take an SAT with their high school in the spring, or you can't get in to take those tests. So they might be making those test scores optional. What I have noticed in some of the applications is if you don't submit your test scores, you might have to do something additional, an alternative requirement, such as submit a recommendation letter or supply them with more information about your extracurriculars. So I would make sure, if you decide not to send any test scores, that you know, well, what may I have to do for that university in order to still be admitted. For all schools that I've investigated and the NCAA, you will still need an ACT or SAT score if you have a GPA below 3.0 for most schools. In some schools, you just need that score no matter what. So you'll again want to make sure that you're looking at each college that you're applying to and what is their policy going to be for it. It has been encouraged by all the universities that, if possible, to take the test. And I believe taking the test is the easiest way to manage this. But if you can't get in to take the test, you don't want to count on Rochester hosting a test for you. I would make sure to sign up sooner than later. Okay, next slide. That leads us to grades and transcripts. Earlier, we talked about sending your transcript through Parchment. This is an example of what that transcript can look like, although we have updated a little bit. Next slide. But as you know, we did pass or fail in the spring, and a lot of high schools around the country did that as well. What that means is those grades will not be calculated into your GPA, okay? All grades starting with this school year and moving forward will be calculated into your GPA. Now, just because we took those no pass grades out of your GPA, it doesn't mean that colleges are going to lower the bar for you. What they're going to look at is some other areas in order to evaluate you. That could be your SAT or ACT, that could be recommendation letters, that could be your extracurriculars. So what I would advise students to do, especially during this time, is to make sure that when you go into this year, your senior year, that you're really putting a lot of emphasis on those grades, okay? Colleges may defer you, they may waitlist you, waiting for those 7th semester grades, meaning after this first semester, you might have to send a second transcript to them with those updated grades to see how you did in your senior year. So you really want to take this year especially serious, especially because we had that one semester where we didn't have any grades for you. Next slide.
Okay. All right, I'm here to talk about letters of recommendation. The first thing is for you to be able to pick your recommenders wisely. In a normal situation, which we all know COVID-19 is not a normal situation for college admissions, but we would be recommending that you choose recommenders that you've had in one of your core curricular classes. So your histories, your English, your math, your social studies, your world language that you've had during the junior or senior year, somebody that knows how you function academically. And one of the basic lines I like to say is, if you're asking someone for a favor, which a letter of recommendation is a favor, that we make it very easy for them to do that favor for us, and then we thank them at the end. So that's the overview. So one of the ways we make it easier is by giving them a copy of your resume, and I'll have an example on the next slide. Provide ample time for them to complete. So for example, I had a student just 2 days ago ask me for a letter of recommendation that I thought was due the next day. And I had to say I was not going to be able to accomplish that. But then she corrected me and told me it wasn't due for 2 more weeks. So yes, I could accomplish that in 2 weeks. Provide a stamped envelope. Most recommendations are going to be submitted electronically, but if they are not, make sure you give them a stamped, addressed envelope so it's easy for them to submit it. Follow up with a thank you. As soon as they've submitted, it's a great practice in our lives when somebody's done a favor for us to thank them for it. And then if you get accepted, let your teachers know. We'd love to hear where you've been admitted, no matter where it is. And then as a result of COVID-19, some universities are providing different guidance on who's allowed to submit letters of recommendation. They are, in some cases, opening it up. So make sure you're reading who they're accepting letters of recommendation from. One last note is that if a college is not asking for a letter of recommendation, they don't want it. They probably won't even read it. So make sure that you're following the university's guidelines. Next slide. Resume, here's a good example of a resume. A brief summary of your personal achievements, any of your trainings and educations, special training. If you happen to work experience, obviously for a high school student, it's going to look a little bit different, where you might put your clubs, your sports, your activities outside of school. And you can just update it for any information you would like your recommender to know. Next slide. Senior interview. After this meeting, your counselors are going to get in touch with each of you to let you know when you're going to have your senior appointment. So during that meeting, we're going to talk about questions you have about college admissions, help finding scholarships. If you're struggling at all with Parchment or any of your online applications, we're going to talk about that and help you figure that out. We'll review your graduation requirements because we really want to make sure that you're going to graduate on time. If you need help prior to that appointment, just let us know. We might be able to find a way to fit you in at a different time. And then don't wait for that interview to apply. Just make sure you're filling out your application starting now, and we'll be there to answer any questions, but we really want you to get the ball rolling on that. Next slide. Okay, so the recap is essentially we're going to complete the application online. You're going to send your transcripts through Parchment. You're going to ensure that you've filled out the release of information on Parchment. Send your ACT and SAT score directly to the college, so not through us. You're going to go to collegeboard.com or actstudent.org and submit it that way. And then make sure that you're staying on top of any changes for the colleges you've applied to on what their policies are related to admissions in COVID-19. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so every fall, the representatives from different colleges come to provide information to students to decide and answer questions on whether applying to that college is going to be a good decision for you. So this fall, where they're still coming, it's just that they're going to be virtual, and we highly, highly recommend that you sign up for these meetings. The college reps that will be holding these meetings will be the same ones usually that are going to end up reviewing your application and making the decision about whether you get admitted or not. So if you have personal questions you want to ask, or just other questions about their application process or about any of the programs that these colleges offer, it's going to be a really good idea that you attend these college visits. Next slide. So again, because they're going to be virtual, we're going to ask that you sign up for, or actually there's no sign up needed for these college visits. If you click on the link, and Ms. Messing, would you actually mind clicking on the link? It's going to take you to this calendar. And so in the calendar, it lists all of the colleges that have already signed up for college visits and the time that these college visits are going to happen. You don't need to sign up for anything. You just need to take a note and say, oh, okay, I want to attend Kalamazoo College's visit. So it's going to be offered September 30th at 1 p.m. And for the most part, they should all be on Wednesdays when you don't have classes. So it should be really easy for you to attend because you won't have to miss any class. But you just kind of make a note of when these college visits are going to happen. And then you go back to the calendar, you click on the Zoom link, and then you'll be able to actually join the meeting. You can go back to the presentation. It's missing. So going back to the presentation, after you, once you attend the meeting, you can have the opportunity to talk to the admissions reps. And again, those admissions reps are going to be the same people that are going to be reviewing your application. You can ask them questions about their programs, dorm life, all of those different types of things. And then also about any programs or scholarships that they may offer. In addition to those virtual college visits that we're going to hold for you, we also recommend that if possible, you take a virtual college tour or a live chat. A lot of times colleges are really being open and accommodating in the way that they're going to deliver that information given the current COVID pandemic that we're under. So they're offering a lot of different ways to kind of get that information given the fact that you may not be able to actually walk on campus. And then other things to just keep in mind, all of your college applications are going to be online. So you're going to make sure that you keep track of like your different login passwords and usernames and things like that. You want to make sure that you double check and triple check your application before you submit it. Making sure that you're using a professional sounding email address, clean up any social media accounts that you may have. And again, like we mentioned earlier, you still want to make sure that your senior year is going to be a good academic senior year for you. Colleges are still going to request that final transcript with your senior year grades. And you want to make sure that your senior year is still representative of all of your years during high school. Sometimes colleges will withdraw their acceptance depending on how your senior year goes. So don't get senioritis, continue to get good grades your senior year.
All right, guys, let's talk about what everybody wants to talk about is money and how can I get some free money? Because we know college tuition is going to be a little bit expensive. So hopefully you're having conversations at home with your parents or guardian about how you might pay for school. So here's some tips on looking for scholarships, which would be money that you don't have to pay back. There's different types that are out there, but what I want to recommend to you is looking at your college or university that you are applying to, the ones you're applying to, going to their website. Usually schools will have merit scholarships, which are based on your high school GPA and your standardized test score, so your SAT or ACT. So this may be another reason that you'd want to consider signing up to take one of those tests, so that way you have the score to submit in case you could be eligible for merit money. If you go on OU's website, for example, you can type in the search bar freshman merit scholarships and see what the requirements are and how much money you could possibly get each year. So it's pretty exciting. I would recommend going to the college website, not just to look at merit scholarships, but to see what other scholarships may be linked up with the college or university you're applying to. Also to see what their deadlines and requirements are. Now there's also scholarships that are out there that come from other institutions. So this could be lots of different places. There's one from the Community Foundation. There's one I've seen before from Joann Fabrics for making your prom dress out of duct tape. I always like to mention that. I mean, so it's not always based necessarily on your grades and your standardized test scores. It could be about volunteering, many different things. So there's a lot out there, you guys, and I know it can be overwhelming, and that's why we're recommending you start looking early. And I know Ms. O'Toole mentioned earlier too, it's not a bad idea to bring a parent or guardian into the search to help you look, because there isn't a standard deadline for scholarships. I'll have students ask me that every year, and it's like, well, every scholarship could be different with what they're requiring from you and what their deadline or due date is. And there will be some that come up this fall. Make sure you follow the directions of what the scholarship is asking for. Sometimes they may want you to write something, an essay, or a short answer. And it is work, guys. I know you're so busy with your classes and you're going to be busy with your applications. And so this could be very stressful on top of it. But that's why you want to make sure you're maybe carving out a little niche of time, maybe on the weekend to spend, or on your Wednesdays if you can, little chunks of time. Another thing you might be thinking is, well, how do I look for these scholarships? Where do I begin? And so on our website, in our scholarship folder at the counseling website, you can see free search engines that you could use. It's sort of like you put in information about yourself, and it's almost acting as a filter to kind of search through, sift through the scholarships that are out there and give you some that might pertain to you that you should consider applying to. I do want to mention there's the Rochester Community Foundation Scholarship, which usually the deadline for that is around Christmas time, the New Year time, but just look for that, because that's specifically for Rochester Community Schools and some surrounding schools. So the chances of getting that money for you guys is a little bit higher. But I would always recommend using those free search engines first. You could even use Zello, formerly known as Career Cruising. There's many things that are out there. And just know that, let's say you spend 10 hours and you get a couple $1,000. I mean, when you break that down, I'd love to get paid that much just for a few hours of looking and actually taking the time to fill out the information. The money adds up, guys. Okay, next slide, please. All right, the NCAA. So if you're planning on playing college athletics, Division I or Division II, like a Michigan State Spartan basketball player, let's say, or something like that, just like the high school has requirements to get a diploma, the NCAA has requirements that you have to fulfill to be eligible to play at the collegiate level. So some of those things would be just the courses that you've taken. And you can see listed here for Division I that you have to have 16 core courses, and you have to have them in certain areas, okay, to be eligible to play at the collegiate level. And if you're unsure if you're hitting the mark on this, please feel free to reach out to your counselor, because we can help guide you and understand if you've got the right classes throughout your transcript in your senior year to be eligible. Another thing that you need to do is you need to register with the clearinghouse and also send your transcript, if you haven't already this summer, via parchment to the NCAA. Next slide, please. All right, advanced placement tests. So guys, this could be another way that you save some college tuition money, okay? The information for registering is probably going to be coming out this fall. Typically now the registration time frame is earlier. That started last year, I think, so that's still new. It's going to be around $100. And then I would recommend that you look at the schools you're applying to and see what their college, their transfer and credit policy is, because you can see specifically what score you may need to get on that exam and how that will equate to certain college credits. Another thing to think about is that you will be sending all your scores to whatever university you decide to go to. So that'll be at the end of the school year. Next slide, please. All right, additional thoughts. So senior year is important. Sometimes students think that it can be a little bit easier, or they can get, as we said earlier, senioritis, but you want to make sure you're maintaining your grades and you're keeping the rigor in your schedule, because sometimes colleges might not admit you directly. They might waitlist you, in which they're going to ask you for updated information, or they might defer you and ask for updated information, which could include your first semester grades, or maybe even wait till the springtime and they want to make sure that you're doing well. Also too, I've had students that got a little too loose with their schoolwork at the end of the year, and if their grades fell down too low, they might have been put on academic probation, possibly putting their acceptance at risk to the university that they wanted to go to. Schedule changes in application. So this is really important too, guys. You're seniors and you're the only people in the school that got to see both semesters. One, so you could make sure that you had your graduation requirements all fit in there. And two, because we want you to get your schedule as accurate and set as possible for the entire year. Because when you apply to these colleges, you're going to send out your transcript, and on your transcript are all the classes that you've signed up for. And colleges are looking at what you're taking senior year. That is a factor in admissions. Not only that, but usually the applications will ask you to hand enter the classes that you're taking senior year. And you want to make sure what it says on your transcript matches what you typed into your application. Scholarships. Don't forget to start looking. I feel like we're telling you there's a lot of things to do, but that might be something where you just carve out little niches of time to get on those free search engines and see what's out there for yourself. The FAFSA in the fall opens October 1st. So the free application for federal student aid, that's what FAFSA stands for. And basically it's something that you're going to want to fill out. And it allows the government and the universities that you're applying to see what kind of financial aid package they can make for you. Perhaps you might be eligible for grants, which would be money you don't have to pay back. If a school has a work-study program, they may offer you a position. And then finally, remember, think about the cost of tuition. Maybe you have some money saved, or perhaps your parents do. You apply for scholarships. So each of these things is taking down the cost for you. But then at the end, you still may have some money you have left over that you need to pay. And so the FAFSA allows you to see what kind of loans you might be eligible for. And that's something that you probably want to look into because they have the lowest interest rates typically. There will be a financial aid presentation September 23rd at 2 p.m. It'll be a Zoom. And we have someone that's going to come and present from OU about the financial aid process and filling out the FAFSA. So I really highly recommend that you come, but at the very least, you invite your parents because you do need their help filling out the FAFSA. It's going to ask information about their tax returns from last year. Okay, and it says college night, but really I think that's to be determined still on what's going to happen with this. So I really want to revert back and focus on those college rep visits. I know that juniors a lot of times typically come to those, but seniors, you may know what you're applying to, what schools, but I would still recommend you consider coming back because this is a great time to ask the admissions rep specific questions about your application or even scholarships or things of that nature, and maybe even introduce yourself. So don't feel that you can't come to those meetings because you can get a lot of good help usually. And also encourage you, if you have questions on your application, reach out to us. But sometimes you might need to just reach out to the admissions officer at the university, and that's not a bad thing. They're there to help answer your questions, and I think it's also good because it shows interest and that you want to go to that school. And then lastly, on this additional thoughts, don't wait for your senior interview to apply. I think we said that earlier, but I realized that some of you, your interview might be a little bit later this month, and I don't want you waiting to get your applications. If you have a question, you should reach out to your counselor via email or whatever their process is, and we will help you. We don't want you waiting. We want you working on those apps as soon as possible. Next slide, please. Okay, and this is just another reminder about your senior year schedule. If you change it after you apply to the universities, then your transcript is going to differ from what you told them originally. So what we require is that you have to contact each university that you applied to let them know of your change and to make sure it's not going to impact their decision on you. That's really important. We don't want to make put you in any risk. So you have to reach out if that's the case. And that's why we're recommending just get your schedule straight as possible from now. So that way you don't have to worry about it the rest of the school year. Next slide. Okay, so what's next? You're going to be getting your credit check letter. And then you can look at that versus your schedule, both semesters, and make sure you're getting all your credits. We're checking that too, but you might get to it sooner than we will. So it might be a good idea to check that and just make sure you're all set for the whole entire school year. Keep track of your interview, your senior exit interview date and time. This is going to be important. We want to make sure that you meet with us so we can check in on you and see where you're at and see if you need guidance. Okay, remember also what I said, if you have specific questions, don't be afraid to reach out earlier than your interview to get them answered. Make sure you're using your RCS email because that's what we're using. So we want to have that in common. And then also fill out your senior interview form before your actual senior interview appointment. This is good info that helps us, and it might give us some ideas or things or extra guidance that we could give you specifically unique to you that could be very helpful. So that's important. All right, next slide, please. All right, so guys, now we're opening up the floor to questions. So please jump in the chat and send your questions to Mr. Green, and we're gonna be answering them live with you today.
Okay. Thank you, counselors, for your presentations. And I have been looking through the chat, and we've got a ton of questions. So I'm going to start with the one that seems to be most repeated, and it has to do with SAT. And I can certainly understand these questions because you want to make sure that you get your applications done on time. Will we be providing an SAT here at Rochester? As I said, that has yet to be determined. We want to make sure that everybody is safe as well as adhere to all of the policies and procedures that College Board gives us for providing an SAT. So what do you do? Do you wait until December? How do you get this done? I would tell students, go ahead and register for whatever test that you can get into. Let your universities know that you're planning on taking that test in whatever date you're going to do it. Now, if you're deciding, you know what, I'm not going to do that test, I'm going to go test optional, I'm going to submit whatever other information that the university is requiring, and that way I'm doubly covered. But as you know, the universities are well aware that COVID is going on. I believe there is going to be flexibility when it comes to this. And because so many universities are making it test optional, this should not stop you from submitting your application. Another question that I asked is between sending your SATs, sending transcripts, how do you go about that? It doesn't matter what order that you do these things in. So if you've got your application done right now, go ahead and submit it. And then you can move on to the next step, or maybe you're doing them all at the same time. When it comes to Parchment, I would go ahead as soon as you can and go into your Parchment account, submit a request for those transcripts to be sent. You could be still working on your application or waiting on an SAT. That's okay. It does not matter what order that you submit these items in. Okay. Another question we had is, since you're sending your transcripts directly to Common App, does the same go for Coalition? Absolutely. You have to send a transcript to all the universities that you plan on applying to. They all will require a transcript. So whether you're using Common App, Coalition, or they're going directly to the university, you must send that transcript. Another question, I've already started my application using my Rochester email address. Is that okay? It certainly is. I would just say for most students, you're gonna not wanna use that Rochester email. You wanna make sure that anything that you get after you have graduated, that goes to the right email address. And if we close out that Rochester School email, how are you going to get it? I would equally say this to your College Board account or your ACT account, something that you might use after graduation. You should not use your Rochester email. I'm going to come back to the essay question and the double major. How do I find my Common App ID? Once you log into Common App, it is in the top right corner, right next to where your name is. And again, you'll need this ID in order to send that transcript directly to Common App. So when you're in your Parchment account, it'll ask for that information. Just reading through here. A lot of questions about SAT. Some colleges ask for a counselor recommendation. So what will we send as counselors? If you're using the Common App, the recommendation that we use as well as teachers is more of a checkbox recommendation where we kind of grade you in certain areas. We also have room to write some comments about you. Me as a counselor, I like to write more personal things because they can look at your grades and see how well they've done. They don't need me to comment on those areas. So I like it when students provide me with your extracurriculars. Over the years, I have found from my seniors amazing things that they've been doing for the last 4 years that I never would have known of. So if you can provide us with some of that information, some counselors actually have a form that you can fill out if you're seeking a recommendation. But let me tell you, in Common App, a recommendation letter is different from filling out the recommendation questionnaire. So just know that there's two differences there. Okay. All right, so if you've already started the Common App, should you stop now and switch to the school app? I will tell you that's completely up to you. When it comes to Common App versus the regular school app, what you might find is there's less portions of the school application you'll have to fill out. That's why it's easier. That Common App might have specific things that apply to all the schools in Common App and not necessarily to that school. In addition, so for the answer to, for example, U of M, they actually have their own page that you will have to fill out in the Common App. So each school might be different in the Common App in terms of the information. It's not completely a one-size-fits-all. There is some common questions, and then the school could ask additional questions or have you do additional essays through the Common App. So it could be different per school. Okay. All right, let's come back to and see if any counselors have any thoughts on this. What tips do you have for a good college essay? Any counselors have any tips for a good college essay?
This is Mrs. Ochulseka. I can speak to that a little bit. So you're going to have a topic that you're going to have to answer. So although it sounds pretty obvious, college reps have come back and said over and over that sometimes it appears that kids just take their best paper that they wrote in an English class and transfer it over. Obviously, they want you to write to the topic. So most importantly, obviously write to a topic. The other thing that, that they speak about is that this really is the only opportunity that they get to know who you truly are. And I know this is a little bit repetitive in regards to what I had said earlier, but they don't want to hear so much about the broken arm. They want to know how you've adapted to the broken arm. They don't want to hear so much about having to experience a COVID pandemic. They want to know how you have adjusted yourself and persevered through that pandemic. So you're going to talk less about what the thing is that happened that turned you into this other person, and they want to really know who you have become. The purpose of that is so that they know that you can adapt on a college campus. So if you take a look at colleges and they want to make an investment in you, they want to be sure that you're going to be able to be successful on a college campus, and they're going to, I hate to put it this way, but they're going to get your money essentially for 4 years or so. You're going to be a solid buy for them. So what they're really looking for is to know that you can handle what is expected of you on that college campus, that you're going to be able to adjust with the challenges that take place. So of course they want to get to know you because they think you're a lovely, fantastic, wonderful person, but they also are a business. And so they want to know that you are really a solid investment into their school and that you'll be able to adjust yourself, find those experiences, find the support that you need in order to be successful on a college campus.
Okay, thank you for answering that, Ms. O'Toole-Sinka. A question was asked, is double majoring a good idea? Would any of the counselors like to take that question?
I can take it. This is Miss Kinney. My best advice to anybody who's trying to choose their major, your major, unless you're applying to a very specific program at any college or university, the major you list on your college application is mostly informational. Colleges don't always use that, and most oftentimes do not use that to make admissions decisions. So if we're just thinking about how you choose what you're going to major in when you get to college, I will say that most college freshmen change their majors in their minds at least a couple times. And most colleges only require you to choose your major by the time you are a junior. So junior, senior year is really spent in those courses that are going to be driven towards your major. If you have two great passions and you want to study two majors, then please pursue what you're passionate about. But it's not always required. And I think you're going to have to backwards plan when you get to college for what your next step after college is. If you're looking at a professional degree, maybe a law degree, or going into medical school, or any other master's program, you know, maybe you're going to be backwards planning your college career based on those end goals. But I will say our goals stay fluid throughout our lifetime and our interests change as well. So try not to put too much pressure on yourself to know exactly what you're going to do for the rest of your life at 17, 18 years old. And you will have advisors when you get to college that are going to help you navigate the graduation requirements for that college, the graduation requirements for those majors. And I think things will start clicking into place for you when you get there.
Thank you, Mrs. Kinney. Another question is again about recommendations. Where do teachers, where do counselors send those recommendations? And I will tell you, it depends on the school. For Common App, the teachers as well as counselors will send all of that directly into Common App. And that's why it's important that you fill in the correct email address for the teacher and the counselor, because Common App will send us a link. If you're sending a recommendation to a school outside of Common App, what you will need to do is provide that teacher or counselor with directions of where and how to send that recommendation. If we're back in school, a lot of times I'd recommend that students provide teachers with an envelope that has already been addressed to where that needs to go, because that's simply courteous and helpful, but it will depend on the school that you're applying to. Okay, let's get through some other questions. We've had some great ones here. This presentation will be, is being recorded and is going to be published. It most likely will be on the counseling website as well as our Google Classroom. So we will make sure that we have put it out in every platform we can. Question, will OCC be at the virtual college chat, and do they need SAT scores? I would have to, I actually don't have it open to see if they've scheduled, but hopefully they'll join us. They do also like to see SAT, ACT scores because they'll use that for placement. But again, I would direct any student directly to the college admissions to see what is their current policy. Things are changing sometimes week by week, and you'll want to make sure you have the most updated information. All right, AP scores. So the question is, do foreign universities take AP scores? And I would answer this the way I would for US schools. You'll want to check their policies. Every school is a little bit different. How much credit that they actually award is based on the department in that university. And those things can change year by year. I know that all the universities have been committed to accepting the scores from this past spring, even though it was a different type of testing situation. So you'll want to make sure, again, you are consulting the university that you are applying to see what are they doing. Second semester school schedules. Seniors should have access to see what classes that they are taking in the second semester through their student view. If you're not getting those, let your counselor know. We can certainly provide you with that, but I certainly would want to know that so we can get that turned on for all the seniors, so you, when you're doing your applications, you can put those classes in there. Okay, still moving through. We have been sharing the link to sign up for college visits. You can find that on the counseling webpage. I believe we're also putting it out on the Google Classrooms. So our counseling webpage, actually connected to Rochester High, has a ton of information, including scholarships. We are updating the scholarship page throughout the school year. So that is a great place to find any information about current scholarships. But we also have information about parchment, transcripts, all of our presentations. So that is a great place to start if you have questions. Does RHS rank? We do not. So when you're doing anything on an application and it asks for a rank, we do not rank. And I would always suggest using your weighted GPA. If they ask for the unweighted, we do provide that on your transcript. But if you're reporting a GPA, always use your weighted GPA. Some colleges might recalculate that GPA, but I would submit the weighted one for them to work with. Okay, I am taking the SAT in October and want to study. College Board recommends using Khan Academy. Have us seniors made an account for this, or is this separate? All students should be able to connect to Khan Academy through their College Board account. This should have been done. If you need help with that, we can point you into a direction to get help with that technology. But this is a fantastic thing that you can use because your PSAT scores go in there. It actually tailors it to you as a student based on what your scores have been. So I would highly recommend Khan Academy, and it's free and online. Where do I submit college app essays? Again, that will be directly through the university or through your Common App. Okay, how do I make an application? All applications for college will be on their website. So you'll typically find a button right on the front page that says apply now, or you can go to the admissions area. How do I know if a college is a good fit for me? Well, this is a great question to talk over during your senior meeting with your counselor because you're going to take in a variety of information as we talked about earlier. And you want to make sure, just like if you were buying a car, you would get all of the options that you were looking for. So it really is a personal decision. Okay. Do I need different recommendation letters for every application? And the answer to that is no. I would tell any student, if you're getting a teacher to write a letter, make it a generic letter to who it may concern. You don't have to put in college names, and that way you can use that letter for all kinds of things, whether it's applying for a job or applying for a university. What I will say is if you do have the name of a university in your letter or your essay, make sure that if you use that same essay or that same letter for a different college, that you take the other college's name out. They do notice these things, so you want to make sure that you are double checking your letters and your essays, that if there's a college name in there, you're only sending that to that same college. Okay. So senior interview forms, every counselor is a little different. So some counselors might be using it, some counselors may not. You can reach out to your counselor to see if they're using a recommendation form. I personally, Mr. Green, I have it posted on my Google Classroom for students to use. So you'll want to touch base with your counselor prior to your senior interview on what you need to do or have prepared. Okay.
Let me touch on that also. So I know that some counselors have sent out emails to each of you individually. Information regarding the form to fill out could potentially be in that. Also, your senior interview time, be sure that you write that down. That's probably in the email that you've gotten from your counselor or will be getting in the next couple of days. Thank you.
Okay, NCAA eligibility. Mainly what they are looking at is a SAT or ACT score, your GPA, and the classes that you've taken over your high school career. They're not looking at clubs and things like that. They're looking at those three areas. If you cannot see your whole year transcript, I don't know if you can see your whole year yet in your student view. You can always send yourself a copy of your transcript using your parchment if you want to see what does the whole year look like. And the counselor can also create a PDF for you if you're having trouble with that. Okay. I think I got through the majority of questions. If I did not, we're running a little long on time. These are all great questions that you can talk over with your counselor at your senior interview. Again, you'll want to touch base with your counselor about how you're going to go about doing that. Some of you might be receiving that date and time in the letter that will be emailed to you and then mailed home. Or you might find it if they have a Google Classroom, they might post that information there. So if your question didn't get answered today, that is okay. You'll have time to work with your counselor on these individual questions. Hopefully I've answered the majority of the questions that are out there. Did any of the counselors have any final comments that they wanted to share? Okay. Well, thank you all for coming. I'm so excited to get this year started. Feel free to reach out to your counselor if there's anything that you need. But we look forward to meeting with you next at your senior interview. Have a great day, Falcons.